Hi, everybody. It's Dave Dyson. I work at Eclipse in Chicago, and I'm joined today by a couple of awesome members of my team, all of whom just returned from our big industry show in Las Vegas. Channel Partners is the industry's biggest show, 8 to 9,000 people from all over telecommunications, cloud, data centers, CX, and just about every other topic you can think of, all converging in one place to meet, to connect. Gives us a chance to visit with longstanding partners, see old friends, and also get out and explore some of what's happening in the technology landscape on behalf of our clients at Eclipse. So I'm going to kick off with a little bit of observation. We're going to talk collectively about what we saw, what we felt, and what we think is going on trend line wise in the industry at large. First one, a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear. For those who haven't been following along, technology and telecommunications particularly has been hit really hard by layoffs and people reduction this year. That was sort of coloring a lot of the show. It certainly tamped down some of the traditional fun that gets had in Las Vegas because people were cognizant of the many tens of thousands and into the hundreds of thousands of people in tech who've lost their jobs. And so I'll get us started with the idea that I don't think the layoffs are over. This is a chance for us to talk to executives at tech companies, big and small. And the overarching theme was, yeah, we're not going to be adding. We're probably going to be having further reductions if we're a very large telco, for instance. And as we think about that at Eclipse and what that means to our customers, unfortunately, not the best news in the world. We expect degradations in service, things getting harder to do, implementations going more poorly, problems taking longer to resolve. And I think that, as we look at that topic across the board, the economic uncertainty of the era is coloring a lot of the conversation we had. So I don't know, Kirk, do you have anything you want to add on that topic?
I think what's interesting in the economic uncertainty is as the providers become more financially conscious in anything that they're doing, that the buying ecosystem is changing and it's changing in real time. So a lot of the things that we had really grown accustomed to over the last decade of within, in particular, telecom and unified communications, with be it aggressive discounting, contract credits, maximizing your contractual flexibility, renewals, adjusted contract terms in contract, and goodwill credits. A lot of that is going away, or it's just not able to be accessed. So you're having providers change contracts in term. You're trying to access that downturn clause you worked so hard to get in the contract, and you're being told that you have to either replace it with new revenue or that you're going to be given an early termination fee. In tandem with that, your account teams are changing, and then anyway on a renewal, as you're trying to go through, you have to be really ready to get up and leave a provider every 3 to 5 years in order to maximize your discounting, either with your existing provider or with your potential new provider, in order to stay at a competitive market rate as providers are trying to protect as much revenue as possible. So your financial goals, you have to be listing out in the forefront right now as a customer. Otherwise, they will get left behind as providers prioritize their own.
And I'd say too, my concern is the compounding impact. These challenges aren't just telecom, right? Many of our client partners are facing the same decisions and challenges. So when you look at potentially your telecom vendor not having as many resources and you yourself internally dealing with that same struggle, how do you plan for that? And I think what it requires is more upfront planning. Your planning cycles now have to be longer because it is going to take longer to get things done. You have to about thinking about things much more upfront. You have to have a much greater awareness of when your contracts are going to end, because to Kirk's point, plan on spending more time in negotiation if you want to get the best of, and you need to leave enough time to potentially change vendors if you want to take advantage of some more aggressive pricing or discounting, because they are not going to be handing out those discounts as readily as they had historically. So I think for our client partners, it means plan farther ahead than you've ever done before, and really be thinking of renewals as a more cumbersome and long-term process. And what you don't want to do is get forced into decisions because you ran out of time. You want to make sure you plan enough time to make the best decision that you can at any given time.
It's a great point, Matt and Kirk both. And, I think dovetailing into that trend is this, and this is as long as I've been doing tech, something new and exciting happens, a million participants come in, there's the race for supremacy that goes hand in hand with the hyper commoditization of a space. So I'm talking very specifically right now about unified communications as a service, and the high flying companies in our space of a few years ago, the Ring Centrals, the 8x8s, the Zooms, are now feeling the pressure of, my goodness, we actually have to run profitably. We have to make money. It's not about net ads and top line revenue growth. It's about profitability. And we're seeing some of that commoditization. Where do you guys see the commoditization pressures happening next in the space?
CCAS is the obvious next victim, if you want to think of it that way. What it means to me is, to your point, Dave, how many CCAS vendors do you think were there?
I lost count at about 40.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is buying is about to get a heck of a lot more complicated, not only because of the potentially having less people and being more fiscally disciplined in the way that they're contracting, but the fragmentation is hitting the CCAS market at an incredible rate. I think you're right. I think I counted at least 40 CCAS vendors. We're seeing an explosion of point solutions as well. That's going to make it much tougher to figure out do you kind of buy a platform where it's a Swiss Army knife and maybe it doesn't do everything the best, or do you try to figure out how to cobble together a best-in-class solution set from a series of vendors? Well, if you're doing that, now you've got more contracts to negotiate. You have more things to worry about maintaining. You've got to make sure they interoperate well and work well together. I mean, there's a new vendor in the space. I'm not going to name names, but they do some outbound stuff. And I said, do you support blended queues? And they're like, no. Okay, well, the industry loves the idea of using blended queues because they've got, in essence, idle workforce, right? How do you get all those things to play together when you have vendors that have a very specific thesis around how their product should work that maybe doesn't fit well into how you think about your workforce? So I definitely think that, you got to really recognize that that's coming for CCAS. We'll see, just like everything else, Dave, you're right. It's going to be an explosion followed by contraction. And now you're going to have to start to try to pick winners and losers years down the road, right? Because you don't want to get into something where we're in this fragmented time. You pick a technology to end up on, and 2 years from now, they don't exist. Oh, that's a tough thing to do.
I think that's so perfectly said, Matt. And like leading out with your project and understanding the level of disruption and change that you really want to undertake in any project is like, hey, what are my key business goals and how am I aligning the technology that the vendor provides with that? And what is the level of disruption I can take at this individual moment in time? Like, you have to align that at the front. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in an amount of project sprawl, and then managing all these different independent points that maybe at the outset you didn't necessarily plan for.
I'm going to pivot and grab Sarah here. Sarah is a superstar at Eclipse and has been with us coming up on 2 years, but it was her first chuck her into the deep end of the pool of the Las Vegas Channel show. So let's get some rookie observations. What'd you see? What'd you think? What did you take away from the show that felt useful, and what are things that you think can improve and change from the perspective of all things Las Vegas Channel partners?
Yes, so I would say the lack of diversity in the tech channel is very concerning to me. So we need to make sure our companies, our buying experiences, and our solutions are reflecting the end users and all of their intersectional identities, meaning their individual combination of gender, race, ability, neurodivergence, etc. If you don't have a diverse group of people in the room designing your product or your service, you are not taking everyone's experiences into account, and you will make severe missteps. One of the prime examples being AI and algorithmic bias, which is something we need to talk more about, but we don't really have time to delve into that right now. So does anyone else want to share their thoughts on the impact of not having diversity in the channel and those it serves?
I love the point, because that's not a topic that's being addressed right now. And um, there's a lot of implicit bias being built into technology at every turn. And I'm kind of laughing because you talked about AI. Boy, I used to say this about cloud. I said it in a webinar about cloud 10 years ago. The definition of cloud is it's a unicorn that shits rainbows. And we can now apply that to the term AI, because it's everything to everybody, and it has ceased to have meaning. I mean, everybody we talk to is like, we're an AI company now. We have all of the AI. We have ChatGPT integrated. And Matt, you've got great perspective on, the potential danger of putting ChatGPT into your platform in front of your customers, to those buyer constituencies, because it doesn't necessarily have a lot of governance or guardrail around it. Maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, Dave, the reality is you've got this explosion and fragmentation, but they're all saying the same thing. They're all singing the same song, right? So at the end of the day, you have to start to think differently on how you evaluate these decisions. I've got a little bit of background with data science. At the end of the day, there's going to be 4 or 5 models that rule today. I'm going to tell you, for the most part, your AI vendor is not building the models. They're deploying them and tweaking them, right? So the differences between the performance of their AI is likely to be relatively subtle. Here's where you will see differences: the care and feeding tools. How can you deploy those effectively in your organization with the right safeguards, the right guardrails, the right tools? And more importantly, how do you maximize the value of your purchase? What does their care and feeding plan look like? Do you need to go to them to make it smarter? Is it stuff you can do in-house? If it's stuff you can do in-house, what does that skill set look like? To Sarah's point, are you ensuring that your care and feeding plan includes diversity in it, right? When you're doing things like conversational design. These are all things that I think historically, care and feeding tools in the contact center were always secondary considerations, because it generally was, you put it in, you have your scripts, and you leave it alone. You don't touch it, right? You might be updating your knowledge base on a regular basis. You definitely, certainly were morphing some of your scripts over time as well. But the pace at which, especially when it comes to AI and automation, the pace at which that's going to need to change, the pace at which it's going to need to be retrained, if you want to get full value, that cycle is much, much shorter, requires a much different skill set, but more importantly, much different considerations than you've had historically around bias as well, and the right type of workforce to support that. So I think that's where the danger lies, is this is not a set it and forget it world once you start to delve into AI and automation.
No, and Matt, I think that that's a perfect thing to say, because right now, depending on the couple of acronyms that you throw out, we're in a lot of alphabet soup right now when it comes to AI, and there's not enough people who truly understand the power and what sits underneath it. And so having people who can actually articulate and push through, because the sales professionals at a lot of organizations may not understand the model, but they're seeing demand, and it's a place where they've chosen to work. Like, getting into use cases, what is the care and feeding plan, and like, hey, how are you going to continue to mature your investment? That's what really matters over time, in tandem with Sarah's thought of like, can anyone actually have a complete model or a complete thought process around it if there's not a diverse set of people in the room thinking of all use cases, rather than the niche ones that come to their set selves.
Yeah, it's an awesome point, Kirk. I want to sort of pivot to sort of around the horn here on Big takeaways. We've talked about a couple of key trends. We talked about, Kirk, you used a great word in our prior discussions, friction, that we're feeling with the vendors. That's eventually going to, be friction with the customers on things like contract renewals and negotiation. Sarah, you talked about, getting a little more diverse in our thinking, both as an industry, but as we go out into the customer environments. And Matt, you and I think, can both talk about AI for days, what it is, what it isn't, and how this is both the most exciting and confusing topic in all of tech. But if you all, starting with you, Matt, had just one big takeaway that you had 30 seconds to share with an Eclipse customer, like what's the thing you think is going to happen over the next 12 or so months based on what you just saw in Las Vegas?
I think what's going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months is unfortunately the potential for a lot of missteps. And we're already seeing that happen in real time. I just read a Contact Center Week article where they went out and surveyed buyers and said, where'd you go wrong? When things didn't work out the way you wanted, where'd you go wrong? And the number one thing people talked about is they were focused on price and didn't consider the total cost. And that's the problem. People don't understand the total cost because they don't understand what it takes to support it, to grow it, to make it more intelligent over time. So I think that it's going to be incumbent upon companies very quickly to start to figure out what does it mean to them now to think about total cost. And they've got to have to think about it in a much different way than they have historically.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah? What are you taking away from a calm and peaceful week in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I would say to prepare for chaos. Communication is really important right now. Everyone has so much going on. There's so much to pay attention to. We really need to focus on being clear about, on the client side, what you need, your needs. On the partner side, we need to be communicating clearly from the providers, kind of interpreting what their actual product is and comparing that to their requirements, making sure we're helping our clients get the solution that's correct for them.
Awesome. Kirk, crafty veteran who's been to, I think you're approaching at least 10 of these things. What are you pulling out of, what are you fishing out of the sometimes sea of sameness that can be, the trends of a Las Vegas show?
I think it's a lot of like what we've talked about here, which is your resources are going to continue to go away. You're going to be pushed to more self-service tools, and the amount of friction that you're going to be experiencing with an existing vendor. As you decrease spend and as you right size your own wallet with them, they will pull resources, and there's going to be more and more difficulty getting anything done at any point with a provider.
Awesome. And I'll close with this thought, to our clients who will be seeing this. We go walk 20,000 steps a day in Las Vegas, so you don't have to. We take a divide and conquer approach where we've met with dozens and dozens of vendors, new, old, potential, exciting new ones, leadership from the industry all around the country. And so if you want to talk a little bit further with any of us on Team Eclipse or all of us about, again, the next 12, 24 months and some of the trend spotting we do when we go out to a giant show like this in Vegas, please reach out. And we covered a wide range of stuff today. I think we could probably sit here for another couple hours. Closing with the thought of, again, the theme of this particular conference was sort of, they had an astronaut, the guy who lived in space the longest, one of the Kelly brothers, as the keynote speaker. How do we evolve right now in this era when everything feels like there's a sea change? It's very, very infrequently when we're sitting in a moment in tech and we go, oh my God, everything just changed. I talk a lot about when the iPhone came out. We all looked at it and said, I don't know what happened, but everything just changed. Are we in that moment right now? I'll ask for a closing thought from everybody. Are we in the, oh my gosh, everything just changed, or are we in a hype cycle right now? Which is it?
No, it's oh my gosh, everything changed. There's no doubt to me. I think the sole question is, of the change that's coming, the most notable being ChatGPT and AI, is it going to be used to turbocharge our performance or to replace us? That's really the question at hand, right? We at Eclipse, I think, universally believe the right way to leverage that technology today is to make all your humans more human, better humans, more performing humans, lighten their cognitive load, allow those soft skills to shine through when you think about it from a context matter perspective. But that it is definitely a sea change moment. And the only question is, what is the outcome? And I don't think anybody really knows that yet.
What do you think, Sarah? Have we given birth to Skynet? Are we heading out to enslavement by our robot overlords or what?
Oh, man. I have to echo everything that Matt said. I think that was perfectly said. I have nothing to add to that.
I have a back order on the Armstrong 9000 replacement unit that they're saying
It's still in training.
yeah, it's still being it's still in its large language model training mode on SD-WAN, but Kirk, do you see it any differently? Like have we entered the dawn of man and machine working side by side in harmony, or are we entering the era of look out, entire industries are going to be replaced by robots?
I think the answer could be both. I think really what you're going to see from an organizational differentiation perspective is the amount of investment that you put into your digital transformation. And I hate those two words together, but like how digital you truly are as an organization, how connected you are as an organization will allow you to continue to adopt some of these new technologies to increase efficiencies, to decrease the cognitive load on different individuals and get more insight into things faster. The more technical debt that you have, the more transformation you need to do to get up to a point of current. That's going to be more and more expensive from an opportunity cost perspective because the technology will continue to advance as you try and catch up to where we were a few years ago.
Awesome. Well, guys, it was awesome. It was an awesome and exciting week in Vegas. Lots to unpack and talk about still. For the record, Eclipse is voting team human right now, and we're going to stay that way. So, again, let's get together and continue the conversation. Things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. And I'm with you, Matt. I do think we have entered a sea change moment with implications and consequences, good and bad, to come that we can't quite see through the frosted glass on. So. Sarah, Kirk, Matt, thank you so much for sharing your insight. Thank you so much for sharing the time with me and sharing Secret Pizza as always in Las Vegas. So thanks for the time, team.
Thanks, everybody.